hello, everybody. Happy Sunday morning. You miss me? Thanks. Here's your coffee. Oh, you're not first. Good try. Come on, everybody. Grab your coffee. Oh, yeah, we'll talk about all that in a minute. You love me? Oh, thank you. Yeah, I was up early this morning. Thank you. You should all disavow me. The more disavowing, the better. I'm already 2 cups in also. What's up, David? Yeah, I started at 4 a.m. today. Woke up at 3 and couldn't get back to sleep, so I just thought, I'll go to work. I do that once in a while. It's a Miele, M-I-E-L-E, Miele. I'm probably saying it wrong. Miele. I don't know. I'm not French. Give me a break. You saw my weird moment, Periscope, yeah. So for those of you who don't know what that was about, last night I'm watching a movie called Popstar, Andy Samberg movie. It's just out on DVD. And there's a place where he mentions Dilbert. And it's really weird to be, watching a movie, just minding my own business, and suddenly the movie mentions me. You can't imagine what that's like. And the weird thing is that, wouldn't you think a lot of people would tell me about that? I mean, did nobody ever watch that movie? The movie we're talking about, Popstar, Andy Samberg's movie. I looked at the reviews, and they were terrible, but I actually really liked it. It was a sort of a weird kind of. It's the sort of movie that you would enjoy on a plane, and you would enjoy if you watched it with somebody, who has a, edgy sense of humor, which I did. Oh, my hand will be on my head. Yes, a lot of news last night, huh? It feels too early to talk about the political ramifications of disasters. So I think I'm going to avoid that for today. But I will. I'm sure there'll be some point in the future where everybody will be talking about it. Have all of you seen the latest polls, like the I think the LA Times tracking poll? Yeah, you could definitely watch a lot of bad movies with Christina. So the LA tracking poll, have you looked at the shape of it? Doesn't it look like a shark? So it looks like there's sort of a tail fin, going through the summer, and then suddenly it opens up like Jaws. Rawr. So it goes, it's like this, so it's sort of this shape through the summer and a little oblong, and then at the end it just goes raw, sort of like very shark-like, don't you think? +6, 3 days in a row. I'm gonna block that guy. Yeah, I'm not sure I trust any of the polls about African Americans yet. It's sort of early still, because Trump's only done his outrage for a few weeks. Weird thoughts. That is a weird thought, isn't it? Almost 7 today. Are there any other polls out today? Anything else happening? Are you going to Periscope the debates? Certainly the first one. So yes, I don't know if this works, but I think I can fucking area. I don't know if this works, but I think I can do multiple periscopes at the same time on different devices, can I? I don't know if anybody's tried that. I was thinking about getting several of them in my living room so that you could, go between scenes, one over my shoulder, one looking at me, whatever. Did any of you see the video of Hillary Clinton talking about the bombings on her plane? Anybody see that? Yeah. And you probably noticed that she was just barely awake. The news was talking today that the hashtag Zombie Hillary is trending today. And so just talking about this from persuasion perspective, right? So Clinton has already told us she has pneumonia. And so you'd expect that she'd be, exhausted and sick. So when you see her acting exhausted and sick and still coming on and, doing her thing, if we were halfway rational beings, we would be saying something along the lines of, wow, nothing keeps her down. She must really be beat after the kind of day she must have. I mean, if you're Hillary Clinton, even, the easy day, the day off, is going to look like a tough day to most of us. I don't think they ever have like a real day off. Not really. They're just days that the public doesn't see them. So imagine how exhausted you'd be if you had pneumonia. So if we were rational, we'd say to ourselves, oh, pneumonia is one of those things that you get and then it goes away. And Clinton has it, so of course she's going to look like she's tired on camera right now. Everybody should understand that. It doesn't mean anything, really. It just means that a week from now she won't be like that. But people are not rational. And that thing is getting played and played and played. And people are not going to say what I just said, which is, hey, this is temporary. She already told us she has pneumonia. Forget about the fact she lied about it at first, if you believe that. But at the moment, it's completely understandable that she'd look really tired. But I think what people are going to do is just see that she looks really tired. And in their irrational minds, they're not going to say, well, I understand it because she said she had pneumonia. They're just going to sort of remember the visual. And the visual is that she just looked tired. And people are going to, I don't think they're going to feel safe in that situation. Her body double. You don't believe the pneumonia story? Well, don't you believe that she also has pneumonia no matter what else she has? Is Periscope my system? Well, I do Periscope as part of my system, yes. In case you're wondering what that means. In my book, How to Fail at Almost Everything and Still Look, and Still Win Big. I forgot the name of my book there for a second. It's hard to read and talk at the same time. But I talk about systems being better than goals. So if you ask me what is my goal of doing a Periscope, 1 to 3 times a day, I would say I don't have one. But yet I'm putting a lot of energy into it, right? I'm on here all the time talking about stuff. And that's a system. So here's how the system works. The system in this case is that I'm practicing. Because given the sort of things that I do for a living, being able to do them in front of the public live on any topic while reading comments and trying to think of thoughts and talking at the same time and still being reasonably engaging is a really, really hard thing. In fact, it's so hard that almost nobody does it. If you were to look at the other Periscopes on here, and I think you'd agree, right? If you look at the other Periscope people on here, they're kind of terrible. So the competition on Periscope is really, really low. There's nobody who's trying to do a Periscope well. Actually, maybe I can think of 3 people who are sort of trying. So what I'm doing is continually A/B testing. And where this might end up, I don't know. But I'm practicing. So I'm practicing reading your comments. I'm practicing, one of the great things about Periscope is you get to look at yourself. So you're looking at me, but I'm seeing myself, exactly as you're seeing me. So I can adjust, what I look like. So at this point, I'd have a much greater chance being on some other video, that I can't see myself, to know what looks good and what doesn't. So I'm getting more relaxed talking to a crowd. Don't say my nose is itchy, because you're going to make me scratch my nose. Damn you. Thank you. I'm glad you like Dilbert. Practicing being anti-fragile? Maybe in some ways. Yeah, so this is practice. I'm now blinking manually. You enjoy the attention too? Absolutely. But by the way, one of the reasons that I think doing these periscopes makes sense for me is that I'm a weird combination of skills and priorities and personality. And one of them is one that somebody just mentioned, which is I like the attention. My eye looks bruised. No, that's just I'm tired. Will there be a backlash if Trump wins? I don't know. It'll be a continuous fight. Do you ever have quarrels with the Garfield guy? No, but I know Jim Davis. He's actually a great guy. Very smart. You look tired. Yeah, I only was in bed for like 3 hours last night. Do I know Nassim? Not personally. I follow him on Twitter. And we've been part of the same message strings. That's been it. Christina's parents. Talk about Obama's speech, please. I didn't hear it. How Snickers? You want to see Snickers? Hey, Snickers. Hey. Do I fly private? I fly just commercial. You saw my predictions. Yeah, if you haven't seen my Twitter feed today, my tweets today, you should see there are a couple of tweets on predictions I made about what could change the change the nature of the race, and I think you'd be surprised how many of the predictions they weren't predictions so much as it was a list of things that could change the result in the next few months, and a number of them happened. All right, for those of you who have been watching my predictions, and you saw the ones that I tweeted today showing how close they were to what actually happened, what's your explanation for it? Because, based on what I talk about, persuasion and confirmation bias and cognitive dissonance and all that, in theory, I shouldn't know why I'm doing what I'm doing. In other words, nobody really knows what they're doing. We all have these little fake movies running in our heads with fake reasons about why we do what we do. So in my movie, I'm predicting a bunch of things about this election, and they seem to be just spooky about how accurate they are. Now, I know why I'm doing it. In other words, the internal movie in my head gives me reasons, which might be just rationalizations after the fact. So I'm wondering what it looks like from your side. Does it look like I got lucky? Does it look like, somebody said I'm just smart, so I'm good at pattern recognition? Is that what you think? Or do you think it's the filter I'm using? And the filter is the master persuasion filter. But the stuff that I tweeted around today had nothing to do with persuasion. It was just a bunch of things that might happen in the future. And it was just pattern recognition, right? Weaponized autism. that could be exactly what it is. Master the human condition. Well, I think you'd have to say, yeah, it is pattern recognition. So it's a combination of stuff. So the Trump predictions had more to do with just knowing that he had a certain kind of talent that I recognize because I share some of the same training. I don't know if he's been trained, but I have in persuasion. So the Trump predictions really were just all based on his ability to be persuasive, and now you can all see it. When I first started saying over a year ago that Trump had these weird persuasion skills, the likes of which the world has never seen, I don't think anybody bought that. But now there's nobody who doesn't. That's not true. Some people still think it's because of his policies. Actually, if you think it's because of his policies, you're just living in an entirely different movie than I am. And I should point out that the movie you're in is not as predictive as mine. I mean, there's no question that Trump picked policies that worked because he is where he is. But I think the policies, he could have picked a lot of different policies and still gotten where he is. But then there are other predictions I made that really were just based on the world being what the world is. I think some of them, my guesses have been gold. Yeah, some of my ability to predict has to do with being a certain age. So pattern recognition is easier if you've seen a lot of patterns. The other thing that I've done is I've been involved in so many businesses and so many different areas of work. I may have just seen more patterns than other people. Because if you stay within one industry, for example, you would see all the patterns in that industry, but after a while you wouldn't see too many new ones. Whereas I've been involved in dozens of different disciplines and businesses, and they all have their own patterns. So I've just seen more patterns. So you would think that alone would give me some advantage in recognizing a new pattern in a new situation. Yeah, that's true. I have the advantage that I can be wrong. So which is a big advantage. So I can make a bold prediction and be wrong about it, and my life doesn't change that much. But if your job is to be on TV and it's your main thing, and your entire reputation is based on it, or you're a politician and you'll be judged by it, you don't have the same freedom to be wrong. So you also don't have the same odds of being right. Because some of the things that you would predict, you just sort of can't say if you're in a different situation. I mean, for example, I can predict that there's going to be a terrorist act in the next 30 days. And if I'm wrong, well, that's great, because there was no terrorism. And if I'm right, it looks like I knew it was happening. But if I were a politician, if I were Trump or Clinton, I wouldn't be able to say, yeah, there's going to be a terrorist attack in the next 30 days. They just can't say it. And I think TV hosts and pundits and correspondents, they probably can't say that either, because they're not in the business of predicting. They're supposed to be reporting. So I'm in a weird situation where I can, after being wrong for a year, yeah. So I have more freedom than most people. The alt-right kiddos quote you all the time. there are quite a few people quoting me at the moment. It wouldn't be just them. Yeah. To read a theory of mind without hypnotizing you, you just make it brief. Did somebody quote me saying there's quite a few people quoting me? Okay, that was funny. Zombie Hillary. Yeah, we talked about her a little bit. By the way, do you have your coffee? Tell us you love us. I totally love you. That's actually more true than funny, because I'm actually very appreciative of, I mean, look at this. There's 769 people who are watching me sit on my couch drinking coffee. Yeah. Some are like Mark Twain quotes. Thanks. What do I think of the U.S. bombing of Syrian troops? I have a meta opinion of all this. And this is another example where you can see patterns when you're a certain age that just wouldn't be obvious when you're 25. And one of the patterns is that when you hear a report from a war zone that something happened, in this case, the Syrian army got bombed accidentally, the one thing that you can be sure of is that you don't have enough information to know anything. That's the only thing you can be positive about, all right? Because think of all the things that you know could be important that we wouldn't know about. See, for example, let's say the Syrians were just being terrible douchebags, and we wanted to bomb them, but we needed to make it look like an accident. Suppose there was a leader, a specific, leader in that army who was especially terrible, and we needed to kill him at all costs. So we said to the Russians, look, I know you don't like this, but we're going to take this guy out. Just let us have this. We'll let you have some other thing you want. We understand you have to act like you're offended that, we did this, but we'll just say it's a mistake. It's important to us to kill this one guy who's going to be in this group. No, I'm not saying any of that happened. I'm just saying that, you could talk for an hour about all the different things that might have been important to the situation to understand it that we don't know. And the other possibility is it was just nothing but a mistake. So to have an opinion on that would be sort of irrational, because there isn't any way we could have enough information to know what's going on over there. Amazing how lightly killing is taken. Yeah. I didn't see Obama's speech last night. Norman Vincent Peale, worth reading. So, if people don't know, the reason that Norman Vincent Peale is relevant right now is that he was the minister for the Trump family when Trump was a kid. And Norman Vincent Peale wrote was he the Power of Positive Thinking? Yeah. So he was accused of being a hypnotist in his time. And what are the odds that the greatest known persuader in the realm of success was also the minister of Trump, who is the greatest known persuader, who is just about to do the most successful thing anybody ever did, which was run for president without any experience and win the damn thing. There's my dog, right behind me. I am the Dilbert guy. The greatest human in history? Well, that might be going a little far. Obama says it's an insult to him if blacks don't vote Hillary. That's pretty good. That's a good persuasion trap there. It's getting 16.5 in Virginia. I don't know what that means. So the license plate this morning with a dill on it. What are the odds? Very attractive. You must have a very bad screen. Are you viewing me on like a flip phone? Why is it a persuasion trap? Because people don't want to. He set it up that voting against Hillary would be an insult to him. And since he's so identified with the African American community, it would be almost like insulting themselves. Oh, Trump's getting 16.5% of the black vote. I still don't believe any of I changed your life. Thank you. I don't believe any of the polls about the African American vote. I believe that, first of all, they're all over the place. And second of all, I think it might be the least predictable segment right now. Predict how many states Trump will win. Well, I'm just saying a landslide. So whatever that looks like. So here's a question. So Trump is, I'll tell you the origin of the name Dilbert in a minute. How many states that Trump is essentially tied in does he need to win in order to have a landslide? Not just win, but win in a landslide. So the origin of the name Dilbert, it was suggested by my coworker, Mike Goodwin. He was my boss at one time at Pacific Bell, where I worked, and I was drawing Dilbert on my whiteboard just to entertain my workmates. And he didn't have a name, so I asked people to suggest names and write it on my whiteboard. And one day my boss came in. He was a coworker actually by that time, and wrote down the word Dilbert next to it, and I immediately saw my future. Does Mike get royalties? No, and in fact, it turns out that the reason he thought Dilbert was the good name of a comic is that it was already the name of a comic, but it was a comic that was seen only in the Navy, I guess. So in the Navy flying department, whatever that is. So whatever is the Navy's Air Force, Naval Air Force is their name for the jets that the Navy controls. But apparently there was a cartoonist who would do these cartoons called Dilbert, in which somebody would do naval aviation. Thank you. Naval Air Wing? Okay. But there was a comic called Dilbert that was just for the purpose of showing what not to do. So the Dilbert in their comic, in the naval aviation comic, was doing all the wrong things and dumping his airplane in the ocean. But I never got in trouble for using Dilbert, even though it was already a comic. And years went by, and I wondered why nobody ever contacted me to say, hey, I'm the creator of the Dilbert comic that already existed. You can't use that name. And it took me a long time to figure out why. And I finally figured out that the cartoonist who was doing it for the military probably thought that because, and this is probably true, that because it was a military, which is essentially a government product, I might already own it, meaning I'm a taxpayer. So, I don't know that the government would brand something and then sue somebody. I'm sure they could, but I don't know that they would. What's the psychology that says that the hidden vote will go to Trump? Well, there are several components to that. One component is that people don't want to admit that they're Trump supporters. Second component is there may be a lot of people who hate both candidates, but they've really made their mind up, and they're just parking their vote with Gary Johnson or Jill Stein. I think there are probably more Jill Stein supporters who might go to Clinton, and there might be more Trump supporters who are parking their vote with Gary Johnson. But when it comes down to the actual moment in the voting booth, they may say, no, I'd rather vote for someone who might actually win. And then they'll switch their vote. Now, there are far more Johnson votes than Jill Stein votes. So if it's true that some percentage of both of them are just parked votes that aren't really going to go for them in the final moments, then probably because of sexism, people who were voting for Jill Stein may stay with a woman and go with Clinton, and vice versa for Gary Johnson. Well, Johnson's not going to get in on the debate. Yeah, social desirability is going to be a factor. Did I ever get invited to work on CNN or Fox News? No. Rachel Maddow is voting Trump. That's not true, is it? That doesn't sound true. Oh, yeah, and then there's the enthusiasm gap. Right. Thanks for mentioning that. Yeah, the enthusiasm gap is insane. Yeah. I don't know if Trump changed the way campaigns will run because there's only one Trump. There are very few people who can do what he's doing, either because of skill or because, you get balls the size of the Empire State Building to do what he does. Just to say stuff that he knows won't be fact-checked in his favor, and to say the same ones over and over again, it's insane. She would raise $1 billion what? Yeah. So Trump has large crowds, but you have to be careful about that because he's just more entertaining. That doesn't necessarily translate into going to vote for him, because voting is not entertaining. Trump has skills similar to Reagan. Yeah, and a lot of that's intentional. Even the slogan is Reagan-esque. So yeah, I think Trump is very much trying to make people imagine Reagan and him as similar politicians. All those people are voting? You might be right. You could be right. They're just not voting. They don't like either candidate. People say that every election. I don't think there's ever been an election where you couldn't find 25% of the public saying, I'm not voting this time because both candidates are so bad. I think I hear that every election, don't I? Would I preferred if the GOP was not Trump? I didn't really have a pick. The one thing I know about politics is that no one is smart enough to know who's going to do a good job. We always think we are. We're pretty sure we're just we're the geniuses and everybody around us is kind of dumb. So we think, yeah, my vote will be intelligent, but all those other people, not so much. New voting system. Well, we need a new voting system. It should all be by internet. It's crazy that it isn't. So if you were trying to keep votes from being gamed, there's one way to do it that you just have your phone vote via your own phone and have it take a picture of your face at the same time you're voting? Because then there would actually be, an actual record of you voting as you voted. Couldn't every single person just record their face and then their vote? And then you run this shit against a big old database that does facial recognition, and you find out if anybody's voted twice. Or you find out if there's somebody who's not in any government database, such as having a driver's license. So I think what you could find is you could identify people just with big data who don't look like American citizens. And what I mean by don't like is if the government has access to every database that has a picture in it, from Facebook to Google to your driver's license to any government thing you've ever applied for, it seems like they could run their facial recognition against that, check it against the votes of people who are doing exactly what I'm doing, looking at myself in the screen, and maybe voting at the same time, so that it takes a picture now and then of your face. I think it would be easy for big data to find out if the vote was rigged. Then let's say that they do the vote, and then sometime after the votes are counted, or maybe before they announce the election, they randomly send back to some people, but not all, their actual vote with the recording of their face. So they send back to you your face and the things that the system says you voted for, and then you can check it after the fact to make sure that those are it's your face and it matches your votes. Now, the way that you would keep that from also being manipulated is that while we think there are plenty of ways for people to manipulate the vote itself, imagine if you simply don't have a program for rigging the check of the vote, the second phase where you audit by sending back to some people, but not all, their face and the votes so that they can check their face against their votes and validate the system. That second part, you have that software written after the election. So all it's doing is reading the data that's there, because by that time, all of the fraud probably happened in the individual precincts. Right? By the time stuff gets to the central database, there are fewer people who have access to it. So in theory, you could protect that better. Right? So then you take that vote, and there's a face, and there's a vote connected to it, and you just check them. Say, mail it back to me and say, is this your face and are these your votes? Because that's what our database says. And if I say no, it means the precincts rigged the election. Yeah, it's not just Brazil. Your coworker, I didn't see that. Did your coworker like my landslide prediction? How will this election be remembered? I think there will be movies about this. I think there's already an ongoing documentary about it called The Circus. There will be books about it. There will be history about it. And I think it'll just be remembered as really about Trump. I think people are going to forget who he ran against after a while. Is anybody really pro-open border? Doesn't everybody believe that you need some kind of control? The Mandela effect. I've heard of it, but I don't know what it is. Who would play Hillary? Meryl Streep. Duh. Will Pepe be in your children's history books? I've got a feeling that Pepe will be left out, but no, actually, maybe not. Maybe Pepe will be in there. Damn it, I itched my nose. Did I see? Yeah, I think Trump will continue pacing and leading as he has. Trump be presidential or entertaining in office? I think he will be both, meaning that when it's a serious situation, he'll be presidential, a terrorist attack, for example. And when he just gets bored, he's going to be really, really interesting. Charisma of Streep equals Hillary. Yeah. Oh, mass parts of the population remembering events differently. Yeah, I didn't know that was the Mandela effect. I thought that was confirmation bias because everybody remembers stuff differently. What if Trump hates being president? I don't know if you can hate it. I don't think you can hate being president. Nobody's ever said they did. Insane Clown Posse? No. There's an Illuminati playing card that predicts the assassination of Trump. Huh. I think Don Lemon will be the unhappiest person in the world when Trump wins. Thanks. I'm glad you like my writings. So, think about this. What is the color you imagine Trump? I'll put that out there. Yeah, what color do you imagine Trump? Red? Oh, I thought you were going to say orange. Yeah, orange. Now, what are the odds that Don Lemon hates Donald Trump? Because you literally have a lemon being angry at an orange. Think about it. You actually have a lemon who's mad at an orange. This is the sort of thing that makes me think we're software. Hillary is orange. Well, I did coin the phrase orange journalism for journalism that is so weak that they just write it on an orange and roll it to the candidate. Yeah, and what are the odds that somebody named Lemon will have a sour look on his face all for the entire election? Who's the guy with the sour face? Oh, his name is Lemon. Come on. Come on. Although, to be fair, he's usually in a really good mood when he's not talking about Donald Trump, so. I think we're software because we coincidentally have all of the same limitations that you would build into software. So, for example, the universe can't be infinitely large and exist even in software, because even software can't simulate the infinite. So instead, we conveniently have limits built into our reality. So you can't travel faster than the speed of light, so you can't get to the edge of the universe to see how big it is. Oh, how convenient. If you were software, that's exactly how you'd write it. You'd just create a rule that would keep people within their bubble. So you don't have to have storage for every possibility to infinity. The other thing is nothing would exist until you observed it, or you needed to observe it, right? And it turns out that's how our universe is. At the at the smallest level, things don't actually exist. They're just potential until you observe them, and then they start existing, and then they stay existing forever. All right. So now, what other situation would you need to do that? If your reality was really a reality, if it was anything like what you think it is, where there's matter and it just sort of exists and you exist and we're all just sitting here existing, it would all just be here. Everything in the universe would already be here, and you would just sometimes observe it. But we know that the universe doesn't act that way. The universe literally only exists when you observe it. And what could be more clear evidence that we're software? Because no, I don't believe in any kind of a traditional God. No. Can we survive the heat death of the universe? I think we did. Yeah, I saw a little bit about the bizarre Hillary Clinton videos where it looks like she's got a green screen, and I don't know. I think all of that's just confirmation bias. I doubt there's anything to it. I don't call myself an atheist because I think we're created, but I think we're created by an earlier race that was basically a lot like us. And by created, I mean that we're literally software simulation. Who can't tell that we're a software simulation? You think the green screen for Clinton's speech was a fact? I would not jump to that conclusion. Who creates the creators? Well, I have this theory that we must be some kind of a circular universe, meaning that the universe is born, a bunch of stuff happens, and then at some point it shrinks back into the singularity, and then we're just born again. So, yeah, it might be donut-shaped. So it could be that the future turns into the past somehow. But, to answer your question, it would be still rational to say that we are almost certainly a simulation without having to answer who was the first, who started it all. Because if there are any simulations, there are probably lots of them. So there are probably infinitely more simulations than there are real founders or real an early, let's say an early race. I'm not sure what it conflicts with. Deja vu is probably just, your brain sees a pattern. Who writes the scripts for our personal movies? It's all happening in the software that you think is your head. All right, I'm going to go be productive now. What is consciousness? Consciousness is, oh my God, I feel like Hillary Clinton giving a press conference. Good question. I have to answer your question about consciousness. I think you could build a artificial, machine, a robot that believed it had consciousness, because all it would have to do is predict what it thinks is going to happen in the next moment, and then compare what does happen to what it predicted, and assign that some kind of a sensation. So that would be the software version of a soul. Because it turns out that the sense that you exist and you're the author of your thoughts and all that, we know that none of that's real, because we know there's no free will. Talk to Sam Harris if you want to hear an actual scientist explain it. But we have the sensation of consciousness. So consciousness is just a sensation. There's nothing magic about it. So if you created software that reacted to sensation, and especially the sensation of predicting what's going to happen to it, and then observing its reality to see how close it got, you could simulate consciousness really easily. All right. On that note, I'm gonna go do something else. I'll check with you later. Bye.